Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 487 of the Juicebox Podcast. If by the time this episode is over, you have not fallen in love with Sophia, there may be something wrong with you. It's a big challenge, but it's just, I love this episode so much. I just had the greatest time talking to Sophia. I'm so excited, I just want to get to it. So nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Wait till you hear this. You are going to have such a good... This is going to be the best... I don't know how long this one is, but however long it is, it's going to be the best part of your day. And if it's not, your money back. What do you think of that? A money back guarantee on today's episode. Well, now I rushed through all that. There's so much music left. We're not really getting to it any quicker. All right, I messed that up. Oh, here comes the end. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor and by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Learn more about Dexcom at dexcom.com/juicebox. You can get started with the G6 or learn more at that address. And to find out about the Contour Next One blood glucose meter, you need to go to contournext.com/juicebox. It is the best meter I've ever used. That's it. I could say a lot of other things about it, and I will in the ad later, but for now, best meter I ever used. contournext.com/juicebox. Okay, so the recording's running, just so you know. Are you by yourself? Is there a parent with you, or what's the situation?
I'm by myself, but the parent is in the house.
Cool, okay. Well, I'm really excited to do this with you. Are you nervous?
A little.
Yeah.
And that certainly reflected in my blood sugars today, but I think I'm calmer now that we've started.
Good. Well, there's no reason to be nervous. We're just going to talk. That won't be trouble. But what happened to your, well, I'll ask you in a second. Introduce yourself first. You can just tell me your name.
Hello, my name is Sophia. I'm from Russia, and I was diagnosed in 2018.
2018. So how old are you now?
I'm 14.
Were you diagnosed when you were 11?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. And you're in Russia right now. That's where you live? That's where you were born?
Yes.
Okay. How did you find the podcast?
I joined a lot of groups. When I was first diagnosed, I looked at Reddit and at Beyond Type 1, and I saw a lot of people mention it, but it took me like a year and a half to actually find it. I searched it on YouTube, but some other podcasts kind of showed up, and I just gave up after that first try.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't do a very good job with YouTube. Should I try harder, do you think?
I think it was the only social media I was really acquainted with, so that's the only place I knew where to search.
Gotcha. All right. Well, maybe I'll put some more effort into YouTube one day. We'll see. Okay. So you're diagnosed. Do you know anyone who has type 1 diabetes besides you?
I didn't know it existed. And that's funny because I had the person who sat next to me in class for a year and a half was type 1, but I didn't know that they were type 1. They just had this weird device on them constantly that beeped, and nobody knew what it was because they didn't tell anybody.
No kidding. So you don't feel like you know anybody in the world with type 1, but the kid who sits next to you in class has it, but doesn't tell anybody that they have it.
Exactly. Oh. And I watched accidentally 6 videos the year before I was diagnosed with people with type 1, and they said it, but I never paid attention to it.
Because you didn't know what it was and had never heard of it before.
Yeah.
That's interesting and strange. What was it? Wow. I never got back to my original question. I'm going to forget it if I don't ask. Hold on a second. I might have forgotten it. We were talking, and I wanted to ask you. All right, it'll come back up. I lost my question already. Darn it.
I think it was about today's blood sugars.
Oh my God.
Right?
Sophia, you should host this podcast instead of me.
I should.
Okay, let's start over again. Where were your blood sugars? Because it's afternoon for you, right? Like it's like 5 o'clock your time?
Yes, it's 5.
Okay, and for me, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Arden's actually taking her SAT right now. And I'm kind of watching it with my the corner of my eye, making sure her blood sugar doesn't get out of hand, but it's doing really well. Anyway, so have you eaten dinner already today, or have you not done that yet?
No, I eat kind of late usually.
Okay, so where was your blood sugar, and then when did you start getting nervous, and what happened to it?
So when I woke up, I did everything I usually do. I pre-bolused, I ate the same lower glycemic index food, but where it usually would have gone to 130, 120 maybe, I saw my first 220 in like a few months.
That's my fault.
That was interesting.
So your whole day you've been thinking about this?
Yeah, I think like a few weeks.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry I messed up your blood sugar. Is it coming back down now?
It's 112 right now, so yeah.
Doing good. Okay. Arden's actually 115 right now. She was 99 for a while for the first 90 minutes of the test, and then it started to move, and so I texted her and had her make a couple of changes, and it looks like it's going to hold here at 115 which is terrific while she's taking her SAT. But okay, so, well, first of all, I'm sorry if you were nervous. Like, there's genuinely nothing to be nervous about, but I do have a lot of questions. I don't get a lot of emails from 14-year-olds. So.
Yeah. Well, I actually listened to, I think, most of your episodes, and the ones I was most interested about were with people around my age.
Yep.
And I saw that from your 400 and something episodes, you only had 25, maybe, if that, with people in the teens. Mm-hmm. And I thought that maybe it'll be interesting to add on to that.
Well, it definitely would be. And I'm grateful that you did this. I feel a little critiqued. Are you saying I don't do enough with kids?
I don't think you should. It's not particularly targeted at kids because most of the controlling of the type 1 is done by parents.
Yeah. You are incredibly mature. Why is that?
I think it has something to do with the type 1. I did everything practically myself because I wanted to. Mm-hmm.
But in general, are you kind of have you always been like this? Like a little more mature than your age?
I don't think I can say that, but I think, I don't know, probably not. I was kind of a weird child.
Why were you weird?
I was the kid in the back corner of the class, kind of drawing on the desk instead of paying attention and throwing paper notes to people in the front.
I'm just telling you that we've only been talking for a few minutes, but you feel like you're like 25 years old to me. Actually, I interviewed a 24-year-old the other day. You're way more mature than she was. So I think it's just very interesting that you, found something. You're managing this yourself. Your parents don't help you with your blood sugars. It's mostly you.
My mom actually manages during the night because I will not wake up at all from anything other than probably an earthquake. Other than that, I just sleep through everything.
Gotcha.
Except if my blood sugar is higher than 200, then I will not get any sleep at all for some reason.
I have to tell you, before Arden had diabetes, I could sleep through anything too. I'm not as good at it now. Although as I'm getting older, it's getting harder to wake up at night. So I understand how you feel about not wanting to wake up. Tell your mom I know what she's going through being awake during the night. But how are you?
Yeah, I kind of feel bad. I feel bad about that since I can totally do it by myself, except for that I don't wake up. And some nights she doesn't get a lot of sleep because of that. And I do. I always get a lot of sleep.
You're just all fresh in the morning and looks like she's going to fall over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what, I guess let's try to figure out a little bit first about being diagnosed. So how did you first notice that something was wrong?
We didn't until the day when the doctor said I was an hour or two away from a coma.
Oh, you took it right to the end, huh?
Yeah.
So
I rode in an ambulance, barely being able to breathe.
Wow, do you know what your blood sugar was? Did they ever tell you?
It was not that bad, interestingly enough. It was 450, I think. But I was laying in bed for a whole day. I couldn't get up, except for the one time I asked my mom for some water, and she brought me sugary, I think it was soda. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, I just didn't want to drink that sugary soda. So I, for the first time that day, got up and got myself a glass of water.
The desire not to drink the sugary drink was the only thing that could get you out of bed.
Yes.
Wow. I wonder about that. I guess very few people will know about it. But that drive to drink water when you're in DKA, it sounds really powerful. You know, everyone's description of it is always like they'll do anything to get water. And so you're basically just about dead, and then your parents figure it out and call an ambulance?
Well, looking back, I actually had symptoms for a year and a half or so because I would drink maybe 3 or 4 liters of water. And interestingly enough, I was so nauseous every time after drinking regular water. The only thing I could drink was carbonated water. Mm-hmm. And, well, that was hard to get rid of, to get a hold of, sorry. And I just didn't drink some days because I was nauseous from water, but I was very thirsty.
And the bubbly water is hard to find where you live?
No, it's not. It's just once I drank it all, which was twice as fast as we thought, we had to go to the store and get more. But we always underestimated how fast I can drink.
I understand. It was always difficult to find because you had already drank it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's crazy. And for a year or so. And so what were early symptoms like? Did you lose weight? Were you what was happening during that time?
I think it was so slow to develop that we didn't notice I had lost any weight, but it turned out I had lost around 4 kilograms or 5, mm-hmm. which is quite a lot.
Well, I would have to take your word for it because I didn't learn the metric system, but hold on one second.
I think that I'm not sure how many pounds that is. Sorry.
Don't worry. I'm going to find out right now. In pounds, I'll just ask the magic machine. Wow, you lost almost 9 pounds.
Yeah.
And how much did you weigh at that point? Do you remember?
I don't know in pounds, but it was 28 kilograms, 29 kilograms.
That's all right. I have the thing up now. So so you weighed 63 and lost 8. 24. That's a big percentage.
Oh, sorry. No, at the end point I was 63.
Oh, okay. I see. So you were 29. You came down from 37 kilograms. Ish.
I didn't weigh myself so often, so that's probably it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Look at you. Yeah, don't worry. You're not on trial. You don't have to answer exactly right. If you're wrong about something, no one's going to come get you. Don't worry. I won't show up at your house and be like, when you were on the podcast, you said you weighed 37 kilograms, lost 8, but it was really 39, and now I'm upset. Nothing like that will happen.
I hope not.
No, right? Could you imagine if that's what I wasted my first trip to Russia on?
Yeah, there's so much to see, not in the winter.
Not in the winter. Is it a really harsh place in the winter?
Well, this winter was really weird. It was almost minus 30 degrees Celsius, which is more than it was last year. Wow. And I stayed indoors the whole time.
I would say, so what's it like to go outside when it's that cold? Are you in a giant jacket with a hood that only leaves a little hole by your eyes, or how do you do that?
Well, I underestimated the weather, and so I wore my regular jacket, and actually my Omnipod failed after I came back inside. And when I took it off, there was so much blood, and the only thing that changed was me going outside into the very cold weather.
So they have to test it at minus 30, you're saying, for you. How did you get a hold of the Omnipod in Russia?
Oh, well, Can we first start from the diagnosis? It's all kind of an uphill battle from there.
Hey, sure. Let's take your fight together. All right. I see you don't like the way I jump around. That's fine. We'll start there.
No, it's not that. It's just there's a series of events leading up to that moment.
I definitely want to hear them. Okay, so you ride in the ambulance, you get to the hospital, and what happens next?
Well, before I rode in the ambulance, my mom was about to make me go to bed, but she had her friend over, and her friends saw me walking to the kitchen, and she said, "This isn't normal. I think you should go to the hospital. You're not breathing enough." I was hyperventilating, so I couldn't take a regular breath, and all I remember was being carried to the ambulance and then waking up in a cold hospital room.
Oh my gosh, that sucks. Arden was panting too at the end, right before we took her to the hospital. I
never heard anyone except me had doing that before diagnosis, so that's interesting.
Yeah, so she was panting in her sleep, and she was asleep and like a puppy almost. And there is an answer for why that happens. It's your body
I think there's not enough oxygen to the brain, right?
Yeah, and your body's just trying desperately it's trying to stay alive. So you get to the hospital, and how long were you there?
In the emergency room, I think it was 22 hours. Then I rode in the ambulance to a regular children's hospital, and I stayed there for 10 days, I think.
They figured out pretty quickly at the emergency room what was wrong?
Oh, they knew immediately when they came over. They said, "All right, let's test your blood sugar really quick." And they tested it, and it was 450. And they said, "Yeah, you're going to the emergency room now."
Okay.
So they did that very quickly, actually.
So did you feel much better by the time they moved you to the children's hospital, or not yet?
I was kind of in a state where I just laid in bed. And the first 2 days just passed so quickly. I was just sitting in bed, not doing anything. But I had company. So the way the hospitals here work, they're just large rooms and with 6 or 7 patients in them. So there are 6 or 7 beds in one room. And there was an annoying 7-year-old who constantly ran around trying to make friends with everybody. And then there were a couple of older kids there too.
No kidding. Do you remember what any of them were there for, or no?
All of them were there for type 1, other than one who was there for, I think, high blood pressure.
Oh, wow. So you and a number of other children were all diagnosed kind of on the same day.
Well, it was the endocrinological floors. So there are only endo issues there.
Right. No, but still, that's kind of crazy. I remember being taught how to count carbs at the hospital with 8 other families whose children were all diagnosed in that couple of day period that Arden was.
That's the same way it was. They had a diabetes school, like they call them. And so with 4 or 5 days, it was held in one room and 2 or 3 hours long. And all of the parents would go and spend that time and write notes. And it was all pretty basic stuff.
Yeah.
And they had a really weird way of teaching them. I demanded to be in the room for them to also teach me. And they had such a weird way of teaching carb counting.
Didn't make sense to you?
They didn't count carbs. They counted bread units, if I'm translating correctly.
Okay.
So every 12 carbs was 1 bread unit or something.
Bread unit. Now, I'm going to tell you that I can't completely remember where, but I've heard that phrase before. And
yeah,
I don't
That's
know
interesting.
why.
Nobody has ever heard it before.
I feel like, it's part of the glycemic. So how much bread can wait? I'm interneting. 2013. Somebody's got a presentation. Bread exchange unit, a guide for diabetics. Ready? People who suffer from diabetes and therefore require insulin can use this measurement in unit to compare the blood sugar effectiveness of carbohydrates in different foods. Boy, this is why the podcast is popular, because when people write about diabetes, they make it very confusing. According to a German dietary regulation, one bread exchange unit, or 1 BEU, corresponds to a quantity of food that contains 12 grams of digestible and then therefore blood sugar effective carbs. That's what they taught you?
Yes, and it was so confusing. It was more confusing than using regular carbohydrates. And also, they said every 6 spoons of porridge translates to 40 grams of carbs, and that's the way we did things there.
Wow.
Except for the people who brought their own scales and measured their food, and they had much better blood sugar results. Let me tell you.
Well, yeah, because this is convoluted, and
it is.
I just read it, and if you asked me right now, like under penalty of death, if you said to me, Scott, you have to explain to me what you just read, I don't know that I would understand it enough to say it. There's some.
Yeah, me and my mom immediately threw that idea out and started counting carbs.
Yeah.
Because she read a lot about it and she figured out that that's probably not the best way to do things.
Good. So your mom helped. So do you get insulin pens? Do you get needles? How do you manage in the beginning?
You have a choice. Well, in the later times when I visited my endo, I had a choice. But first, they gave me a Novo Rapid pen and a Lantus pen.
Okay. So you were MDI, you were just shooting some Lantus and covering your meals. Did you correct blood sugars, or did you just give yourself insulin at meal times?
In the hospital or after the hospital?
Just moving forward, like as you got home and got settled.
Well, nobody really explained to me the concept of correcting highs. And also not lows. So my mom thought that since regular people's blood sugar went down to 60 sometimes, she thought that it's completely normal for type 1s also. And so I didn't correct to low until 60 or 55.
How did that, did you feel okay at that number? Or no?
I did not.
Did you mention to your mom you thought she might be wrong?
I said, are you sure this is the way this works? And she said, well, no.
That's honest. I would take an honest answer, you know?
Yeah.
So you guys figured out that was a little too low, and where did you start correcting after that?
I went to we asked the endo, and she said, that's so not the way to do things. No. And
did she start telling you about bread units again?
She didn't even know they taught bread units. She thought it was regular carbs. She just took all of my insulin carb ratios and basal rates, and she just said, okay, well, you seem to be doing fine. Go on.
Good luck. Well, it sounds like your mom was trying to figure things out in the beginning, and she's using the internet, which ended up being helpful, I guess, overall. In that first year, what were your A1Cs like?
I think since I was not correcting the lows, mine was 6.5. But it was not because of good control. I was still having high blood sugars regularly. It's just because a lot of the time I was low and didn't do anything about it.
How did you know that's like, did you learn that from the podcast?
No, I just kind of
figured it out.
I knew that the A1C is the average blood sugar of 3 months.
Right.
So I kind of thought that, well, since I was having a lot of lows, that's probably why.
All right, Sophia, are you really smart? Like, forget that you drew on the desk in school. Do you understand math?
I would say yes, but don't follow up with my teachers.
Okay, well, listen, I had a problem in school as well. I did not like school very much, but I was okay smart. I just didn't like what was going on. The reason I ask is because I just assumed you heard it on the podcast that variable blood sugars weren't good for you, even if you got a lower A1C, but you figured that out by yourself. When I talk to a lot of adults who just tell me, well, the A1C 6.5, we're good. And I'm like, no, look, you're like 350 here for an hour or two. And then, you crash down to, to 60, and you said you were 60 for an hour. You're just confusing the test. You're not, you do have a 6.5, but you didn't come to it kind of authentically. And it's definitely not good for your overall health. But you just figured that out when you were 11?
Well, I was diagnosed a month before I turned 12. So I was 12.
Okay, so I'll say it again. So you finished that, you figured that out when you were 12?
Well, me and my endo, kind of. So I told her I was having a lot of lows, and she said, but your A1C seems good. But I said, but I'm having a lot of lows. She said, well, don't. Sort of.
So Sophia, your endo didn't really get it, but you got it, and you just made this change on your own. So how do you make a change like that when you're completely by yourself? Like, how do you figure out how to stop high blood sugars and not have rebound lows and things like that? What did you do?
Well, when I was on MDI, I thought everything was great. I thought, yay, my blood sugar is so good. I'm measuring it 3 times a day, and it seems really good. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm doing a great job. But 2 weeks after I came from the hospital, my mom surprised me with a freestyle Libra.
Okay.
And now looking back on the graphs, it was a total roller coaster. It was okay from a period of 2 hours for me to go from 260 to 50 to an urgent low to 100 and up and down and up and down. And there was also a thing where once I asked my mom after I was diagnosed, how many carbs can I eat without insulin? She said, I don't know, 10? And so I started eating 10 carbs regularly without taking any insulin. And my blood sugars were going up because of that. And It was very confusing.
Sophia, I mean this in a really good way, so I don't want this to get lost in translation at all. But right now, people are listening to this, adults, and they're thinking, oh my God, this kid figured all this out when she was 12 years old, and I'm over here struggling. People are just like, oh, what am I doing? I can hear you all thinking right now, by the way, just the like, how did this kid just get, but you're not, it's fascinating. Like, it really is fascinating listening to you talk about seeing something that can appear to be so complicated to people, but maybe because of your age, you just looked at it in a simple way. Like, is that why you like the podcast? Like, because I'm 50, right? And I live in another country, and I'm talking about something I don't have that you have, but you like this show enough to listen to every episode of it. So what is it?
Almost every.
Well, hey, listen, there's no reason to tell people that. Just say you listen to every episode, okay?
Yeah.
We'll try again. So you listen to every episode. Say, yes, I did.
Yes.
See? Exactly, Sophia. Thank you. But my point is, what is there about, I want to understand what it is about how I'm talking about diabetes that resonates with you and jives with how you think about it. Because I'm trying to figure out how you think about it, because you're very clear-minded about it.
Well, it's obviously because of your charming personality and okay, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Lean into that sarcasm. I'm good with it. Don't worry about it.
I think it's just because something made sense finally. Nothing made sense previously to that, and diabetes was always second. When I was at school, I would just know, okay, I have a sandwich for lunch. Let's just bolus 2 units. Oh no, I'm 300. Mom says to bolus another 3 units. That makes sense. We'll just move on. Wow. And finally, something made sense where maybe just bolus a little bit earlier. Maybe don't eat sugar and not bolus for it because it's under 10 carbs.
So the common sense stuff just started to resonate a little bit, and the timing idea. Yeah. And you think of that now on your own, like you pre-bolus, I imagine. What is your A1C now?
Well, we haven't measured it since August. It was 5.7.
Wow.
But Clarity says it's probably around 6.6 right now because I hit a big growth spurt, and my blood sugars, I had to adapt really quickly because I needed twice the amount of basal and way more insulin, and I was still being high. So that was a little hard. But other than that, I think I know the basic principles of it, yeah.
Wow. So how long did it take you to recognize that you needed a significant amount more?
Probably since one day my blood sugars were perfectly stable with 15 units of basal, and the next I needed 7 extra correction boluses, and I thought this isn't normal. Let's do a temp basal. The next day that temp basal didn't work. Let's do another temp basal. And at some point I realized, this is not going to go away. Should probably just change the regular basal.
I'm so happy for you. And I'm happy for you as well, because you're about to find out about the best darn diabetes tool that I've ever seen in my life. That's right, I said best darn. The Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor. Why don't you have one? Why have you not at least looked into it? I mean, it shows the blood sugar constantly. Speed, direction, and number. That's live look. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you are looking like you ever hear that on the news? They're like, you're looking live over your blood sugar. It's 117 and stable. That's Arden's blood sugar right now, 2.5 hours after Chinese food. Actually, it's about to update again. Hold on a second. Let's see if it changed. And it has. It's 115, which doesn't surprise me. Why doesn't it surprise me? Because, let's see, about 20 minutes ago, I noticed that the blood sugar looked a little sticky, meaning I didn't think it was going to break off that line it was at, around the 121, 117 mark. So I asked Arden, sent her a little text, and I said, hey, I think we have to bolus a little more for this food. And she did, and now we're starting to see it move. Now, I know the number only moved 2 from 117 to 115, but I can see on the graph that it's beginning to trend down. I can see the bolus working. It's fascinating. And it's available to everyone who has a Dexcom G6. Find out more at dexcom.com/juicebox. And don't overlook that I'm looking. Don't think like that. Let's try again. Don't overlook that I can see Arden's blood sugar on my iPhone, and you can too, or your Android phone. As a matter of fact, 10 people can. 10 people of your choosing can follow blood sugars if that's what you want. And if that's not what you want, don't do that. Just keep the data for yourself. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. Get started right now. What do you think the most overlooked diabetes item is? Like the thing that you just don't take that seriously. No, not seriously is the wrong word. The thing that you don't pay close enough attention to when you're purchasing, right? In my opinion, it's your blood glucose meter. A lot of people just take the one the doctor gives you, or your endo writes a script for one, or your nurse practitioner is like, here, there's one in the drawer, take this one, or blah, 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 blah. How often do we actually look? Like, would you buy a car that way? No. Would you buy a house that way? No. Would you rent an apartment that way? You would not. Would you even buy a avocado without squeezing it first? You wouldn't. But for some reason, you just took the meter they gave you, and you're like, I guess this is good. But you know what could be better? The Contour Next One blood glucose meter, right? It's a ripe avocado in a world full of lemons. contournext.com/juicebox. An incredibly accurate meter. I'm sorry, my voice just broke. An incredibly accurate meter with second chance test strips, meaning you can touch some blood, not get enough, go back, get more without messing up the test or ruining the strip. It's got a super bright light for nighttime viewing, as well as a nice, big, visible screen. Except, you know what? The meter's not that big. Fits in your pocket, your purse, your bag, wherever you carry your gear. It won't be in your way. It'll just do what you need it to do. Contour Next One is the meter we use. It's fantastic. It is the most accurate one I've ever seen. contournext.com/juicebox. Insulin.com/juicebox. It may even be cheaper than you imagine. Go check it out. I really am. I don't know you well enough to tell you I'm proud of you, but I felt proud while you were saying that. It is absolutely astonishing that you figured all of that out. And I think, again, that my astonishment comes from the number of adults who I've spoken to who can't be that intellectually agile when something's happening. They get so stuck in the basal's 15. Okay, maybe it needs to go up, but I'll try 16. That didn't work. Well, we'll try that for a week and see what happens. Like, you just pushed it up 7. You went from 15 to 22 a day.
Yeah, but it was in the course of a couple of months, so it wasn't immediately.
Okay, so it took you a couple of months to. I understand. By the way, it's a huge jump. It's 50% more, and so, but you did it by yourself. You made that decision.
My mom knows a lot about my diabetes, and she helps me a lot. Mm-hmm. I do all of the meals and corrections by myself, but like once a week I will tell her my problems and she'll say, well, just adjust this. And I said, yeah, that makes sense.
I love it. I love how simplified, in a simplified way you think about the whole thing.
I get very stuck in an idea that my insulin to carb ratio was always this. I can't change it now because it was always this. And then when I tell my mom a week later the problem, she said, well, obviously you need to change it. It's not working.
That's amazing. Oh, I'm so happy. I really am. Like, this is, you understand that beyond the short email correspondence that we had, like, in my mind, I'm sitting down this morning to talk to a 14-year-old. I don't know who you're going to be. Like, I don't know how this conversation is going to go when we start talking. And it took me a couple of minutes in the beginning to adjust myself because I feel like I'm talking to, like a younger, less experienced version of Jenny right now. Not like I'm talking to a 14. Do you know Jenny? Do you listen to the episodes with her?
Yeah, I listen to all of them.
See, you were getting so good at this.
Even the pregnancy ones were interesting.
Really? Do you ever think you'll have kids?
I don't want to think about that right now, but it was interesting to see how people adjust in new situations.
You are my favorite listener, Sophia. If there was a t-shirt that said favorite listener, I would send it to you. There is not one, but if there was, you'd get it. I'd even make an award up. And then if you one day were not my favorite listener anymore, I'd have to make you mail it to somebody else. But let's not get involved in all that awards things. But you're seriously my favorite person. So, but I don't want to take you off your path because you wanted to talk about things like that. So you came out of the hospital with your MDI, and how did that go? What happened next?
Well, my mom got me the Freestyle Libre, and I thought, well, why doesn't it tell me when my blood sugar goes low? I don't want to keep checking. So I started Googling what else is out there, and I saw that Dexcom exists, and people like it, and I started telling, Mom, I need a Dexcom. Mom, let's find a way to get it. And we found a store online that sells them, and there's a way to get it. It's not covered here, but we found a way to get it delivered, and I got the G5. Then I started doing more research, and I saw that there are things that make you not inject 7 times a day, and that was interesting to me because the Omnipod seemed so much better than other pumps, because I don't like being like tied to something, and I have a cat, and that's probably something that played a major factor.
The cat did?
Yeah, she likes to chew stuff, and she loves playing with string, so the obvious conclusion was that's not a good idea.
I'm thinking, are you going to be like Elon Musk one day or something like that? Will you remember me when you're famous and rich, please, Sophia?
Yes, I'll send you a check every month.
I don't need to hold. Well, listen, I don't want to say no to the check, but I do. I just meant like, just, throw me an email. Like, when you're banging around the world doing amazing things, like I want to be able to say like, oh, I know Sophia. Because I'm trying to imagine myself at 14 years old. And I think I was just like a barely alive idiot. Do you know what I mean? Like just barely moving around like a blob, basically.
It depends on who you ask. My teachers will agree with you.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, they don't get to hear you talk about this.
No.
Are you saying that when I was 14, there was something I might have been good at, but nobody bothered to find out?
Exactly.
I'm going to accept that from you. Also, you might be my therapist now, too. So you're just, are you good at diabetes because it's coming naturally to you? Or is it because you're trying to take care of yourself?
It doesn't come naturally at all. It took a lot of work to reroute my ideas since my endo and the hospital was telling me one thing. Check every 2 hours. If you're high, bolus, check in 2 hours again. Adjust basal if it's 3 days in a row, the same thing. And they make it sound like such an exact science. But there are so many factors that play into it. If I know that I'm having a stressful day, the next day I need to make it temp basal. But they won't tell me to do that since they'll be scared that I will go low because I'm not 100% sure that my blood sugars will go up. And I had to reroute a lot and make my mom listen to your podcast as well.
So that's interesting. So you found that a side of her started figuring out things you wanted to do. And then you said to your mom, this must be interesting. You went to your mom, a Russian woman, and said, there's a guy in America with a podcast and I want you to listen to it so we can learn how to take care of my blood sugar better. And then she grounded you. What happened next?
No, I said, there's a guy with no medical degree that's telling me he knows better than my endocrinologist that spent a lot of years in medical school, and I'm going to listen to him now.
And this went okay with your mom?
She said, yeah, sure. if that makes you happy.
I don't know why I love everything about this conversation. It's absolutely fascinating. So she's like, she didn't say like, well, I'd like to listen to it before you do that.
Oh no, she listened to
Okay.
it. She said, wow, he sounds like he really knows what he's talking about.
Well, you tell her I'm very good at pretending that I know what I'm talking about. No, just tell her my confidence comes from, I don't know where. Well, that's not true. Around diabetes, my confidence comes from experience and seeing it happen over and over again and being able to break free of kind of old ideas about management of diabetes, kind of like you were talking about. Like, you know, there's this one thing that you wouldn't know because you're young and you haven't been involved in the space, but people used to say all the time that, you know, your diabetes may vary. You know, like it's what happens.
Oh, that's what I heard too in the hospital.
Right. What happens to you, Sophia, won't happen to my daughter or won't happen to a 50-year-old guy who's listening right now who has type 1. And I understood the kind of overarching sentiment, which was variables are different for you than they are to somebody else. And so it's going to be different. But I just kept thinking if you boil it down far enough, it is all happening the same way for everybody, right? Like let's find common ground for everybody with type 1 diabetes. And to me, that common ground is that if you have the right amount of insulin and you put it in the right place, that you can keep your blood sugar stable and low. Now, it's not as simple as that makes it sound, but it is true. Then there are a couple of outliers, right? There are some people, for instance, who have gastroparesis, you know, they have a stomach emptying problem, so they can't kind of count on when their food's going to be digested. But taking those sort of outliers out of the equation, everyone else using insulin is experiencing the same core experiences, right? And if your basal's right, and if you pre-bolus meals, meaning if you line up the action of the insulin with the impact of the carbs that you're eating, you won't have spikes at meal times. It's just true. Like there's no scenario where if you do it right, your blood sugar will spike.
Well, except for the case where you're very stressed, or you had too much exercise and didn't account for that.
Right. No. Oh, 100%. There's going to be variables that impact your blood sugar. But if you go back to what I said, even if you're very stressed or you had exercise that you didn't account for that was going to make your blood sugar go up, the truth is, and this would be difficult to do, but if you knew the stress was coming and you bolused for it, or if you you could impact it. Like, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. But Arden's blood sugar right now during the SAT testing is a good example of that. You know, leading into the test, I assumed the test was going to be at least burdensome, maybe stressful. I wasn't sure. So we increased the power of Arden's insulin going into the test so that she wouldn't spike. And so had she magically not experienced any kind of like outside influence, we could have just taken that insulin away. But we looked at it and got ahead of it. And I think at that core, whether it's you, Sophia, 14 years old, freezing your butt off in Russia, or, you know, some guy named Bill living in Florida right now, like, that is the truth for everybody. And I feel very comfortable standing behind that. So I'm just super happy that you found this and that it's been so helpful for you so far. So there's
also a problem. Yeah, moving on, right?
Yeah, please.
Sorry. With the Omnipod, for some reason, my mom thought that pumps don't work and that they always inject more than you want them to inject, and that they are bad. There was just this stereotype of pumps being bad in her head. So it was very, very hard to convince my mom.
So what did she hear? Like a news story where someone's insulin pump like went crazy and wrapped a cord around their neck and choked them or killed them or gave them too much insulin or something?
And maybe I'm not sure how older pumps were, but now they seem just very stable.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It would be like hearing, there was this news story once where they said somebody's brakes didn't work and they just like drove off a cliff. And if you heard that news story and then said, okay, well then we can't drive cars anymore. Right? Like, it's, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a weird leap to make, but I understand it as well. Like, I understand her. If she heard that and thought that was true, then I would understand her being concerned about it. So how did you talk her into that?
I took me going to the endo and making the endo tell my mom that pumps are perfectly safe. You
put the endo in charge of it.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So, and also there's a bonus. If anything went wrong, we could always blame the endo.
Look at you setting up ways to get out of this scenario if you need to. Yeah. Are you good at manipulating your mother in other parts of life? I know she's going to hear this, and you might not want to give up your best secrets, but do you have her doing things that she doesn't realize she's doing?
Yeah.
You don't want to admit to them out loud?
No.
Good for you. Yeah, keep your game going. Don't give it up for me. But that's really, even that's a next level idea. So like, you know, my mom has a problem with this. I'll end around her to the endocrinologist, explain this to the endocrinologist, get her on my side. And so she can impact my mom. My mom will listen to the endo where she might not listen to me. Seriously.
Yeah. And the endo, after hearing us talk about pumps, told us, if you want a free pump, go on this waiting list. That usually takes around 3 years for people to get a pump. And the pump is a couple of years old. And it was the very old Medtronic pumps, I think. And then she gave us a manual in case we wanted to buy our own pump. But the pumps were all Medtronic pumps and also very old.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah, that's not going to work. And then I went and I did research, and on the site where we bought the Dexcom, the Omnipod was there. And I decided, this looks way better than my cat chewing through a tube or me not being able to shower without disconnecting everything.
Right. Sophia, you promised me something if I ask you nicely. When you mature to a full adult, please don't use your superpowers for evil, okay? I want you to use them for good. because you found out how to get like an insulin pump and a Dexcom into a country where they're not sold. So I get emails all the time, a lot of them from Saudi Arabia, actually, where people want to buy stuff like that and can't find it anywhere. I know a gentleman.
Just Google it. It was a very quick Google search, honestly.
You telling me old heads don't know how to use the internet?
I wouldn't say that directly to your face.
But you mean it. I understand. Yeah. I believe I know a family who flies from the Middle East to America, buys supplies, and goes back with them.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they find a friend who lives in that place, make the friend buy it and ship it to their post office and save money on a plane ticket?
Sophia, what would you think if a couple of times a year I took life questions from the audience and just got you on to answer their problems for them?
I would be glad.
We'll call it Common Sense with Sophia. And they'll ask big, long, convoluted questions, and you'll just give them one sentence. You could be my child, I think. The way you think about the diabetes and everything. And even like just kind of like life stuff. Are your parents similar to you in thought, or do you find yourself thinking differently than them?
Well, I think I kind of took something from the both of them. My dad has a very logical brain. My mom is very artistic. And I love art, and I did music for a long time, but I also love math. Mm-hmm. And I want to become a biophysicist. I think that's how in English you say.
Wow. What is loosely, not like, I'm not asking where he works, but what kind of work does your dad do? Is he an engineer?
Not currently, but he does something with logic.
With logic.
Yeah.
Does something with logic. Is it something you can't say? Sophia, do you realize that I only understand Russia through movies that are made in America?
All the movies are either Russians drinking vodka in some apartment, or them being mass murderers, or these mafia leaders, which is very not true.
So you're telling me that you're not wearing a giant like mink hat right now with big ear flaps?
We have one of those, and because it is very warm in the winter.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I have one. I'm such a baby when it comes to the cold that if I go outside, I have one I wear for like shoveling snow or doing stuff like that. And I think mine's made out of rabbit, if I'm not mistaken. If you put it on in the house and don't immediately go out in the cold, you start to overheat. Like, it's so warm. It
is warm, and it's practical. Like, you don't have to wear a hood, then wear another hat.
Yes.
You can just put that on.
It's ugly, and it looks terrible on me. It looks like my head is trapped in a fuzzy box, but it's so warm. I would never make fun of it. But in my mind, like, you're wearing one of those right now with the front of it folded up. And when you said it was minus 30 degrees outside, I didn't even want to tell you. But if you told me I had to go outside and it was minus 30 degrees, I would cry. Just so
it's not minus 30 currently, but it was a month or two ago.
Well, if I was there with you that day and you said we have to go outside, I would probably just cry a little bit. Like, you'd see a tear in my eye and you'd be like, oh my God, that guy's 50 and he's crying. And I would
the snow was up to my shoulders, I think.
Really?
Well, because I think part of it was shoveled to be that way, so the paths will clear up, but the sentiment is still there.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, so this is not what's going on right now. You are not. No, you don't make extra money.
Only 2 degrees.
But you don't make extra money by like taking apart declassified nuclear materials and selling them on the black market. Like, that's not your after school job or anything like that.
No, definitely not.
Sophia, I love how long you paused and then were sarcastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Where did you learn English so well? Is that just something you do in school?
It is something to do though that we do in school, but I think mostly because my mom made me since I was a baby learn it as a second language because she thinks that it is the only language that is close to being universal, and she wanted me to have that skill.
So it's really cool. And does your mom speak it, or did she have to teach it to
Yeah.
her? Oh, she
Yeah,
does.
she does, and my brother does, and my father does.
Oh, you have siblings? Is there any other autoimmune stuff going on in your family? Anybody's thyroid weird? Have celiac disease? Anything like that?
No, I'm the first one, as far as I know, that to have any problems.
Wow. Wow. You're doing such an amazing job. Like, are you aware of how well you're doing?
Well, my blood sugar started going up, so that means I'm still nervous, but I think it's going down now.
Well, I don't mean doing well now on the podcast, but you are doing well now on the podcast. But I mean in general, like in your life with diabetes. Like, are you aware that you're doing well for yourself?
I'm really hoping that I will prevent any complications because I already have to wear glasses since birth, so I do not want any other problems.
You're like, I don't need another thing to wear. But so in your mind, controlling your blood sugars, keeping them stable, keeping them within a reasonable range, that's about longevity for you. That's about living well.
Well, yes, because the only thing I knew about diabetics was type 2 diabetics had their toes cut off.
Did you get that on the same website?
That was the first thing I thought of when they said diabetes.
Really?
Yeah. And so that's still in the back of my mind somewhere, even though I know it's irrational. I still think about that, and I think that fuels my I wouldn't say anger.
Holding onto your toes keeps you motivated?
Yes.
Oh, it's a pretty good motivation. I have to be honest. If somebody told me right now they were going to cut off my toes if I didn't vacuum the carpet, I'd get that carpet really clean. So I don't know if there's a real correlation, but it's interesting because you were younger and that was your scope of understanding for diabetes. Like you had heard somewhere that people with diabetes can lose their toes. And that's how it struck you when somebody told you had type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. Okay. So you somehow like, I don't know how to say this. I want to try to be delicate, but financially your family's okay, right? Like this isn't cheap to get these devices for you.
It's not. And that was a factor to consider, but we thought that it would be way better for my health because, I couldn't correct highs because my insulin correction ratio is not that big for me to bolus a unit at 180.
Mm-hmm.
So I did have the pen that was half a unit, but it barely worked for some reason. I think I got a broken one. So we just considered it and we thought that, well, we're saving money on further complications and treatments, so it's kind of pays off.
Well, and your parents are able to do it. So is it a bit of a struggle for them financially, or is it just like, is the house made of gold and it's not a big deal?
It's probably a struggle. It's one of the factors that I hadn't really thought about that much. I probably should have.
No, I don't want you to, please I want you to understand why I asked. I didn't ask because of you. I asked for the podcast. I want people to understand, because not everybody can afford this stuff. Like, is this something that your mom and dad said to themselves, all right, this is going to be a bit of a burden for us, but there's a lot of value in it, so we're going to cut back in other places and do it.
I think that's kind of more leaning into the direction that happened, because it was my insulin correction ratio. I know probably not supposed to say numbers because it's different for everybody.
You can say numbers. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It's around 1 unit to 100.
For you.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you were trying to correct numbers that the pen wasn't allowing you to do properly.
Yeah.
And your parents decided, your long-term health is a priority, and so they're going to eliminate. So your brother's not wearing shoes right now, and you have an insulin pump, something like that, right?
Yeah, we just go barefoot in the snow, but it's worth it.
Well, I mean, honestly, you can't go outside anyway, so who cares?
I'm homeschooled, so that helps.
Are you homeschooled because that's what you are, because of COVID?
I think that's what I prefer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask, has COVID been a big deal in Russia? How are you guys handling it?
Actually, yeah. Everything closed down, and well, we had to announce us going to the store.
You have to tell somebody you're leaving the house to go somewhere?
Yeah, and I am only one person, I think, who was allowed some, but it kind of cooled down, and I think there's now a system. Everybody wears masks, holds in their coughs, and everything's okay.
You know, if you cough or sneeze in public now, people look at you like you set fire to a school bus. They look at you very strange.
When I was outside once, and I forgot my mask, so I stood very far away from everybody at the at the front of the store. Mm-hmm. While my mom was checking out, and an old lady came and she yelled at me for not having a mask. And she brought the people who worked there, and she made such a big deal. But I was standing in the corner near the exit, not near everybody. That was very traumatic.
Was it upsetting?
Well, it was kind of scary because I'm a rule abider. I don't like to do anything wrong. I'm that type of person. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. You sound like you might be a tough kid.
Well,
I mean, at least in your mind. Do you agree? Like, are you mentally tough?
I think I told myself I had to be when I was diagnosed.
Okay. Do you miss, can I ask you a question? I don't want to make you sad, but do you miss not having diabetes?
I think I would have been much healthier if I hadn't, because now I kind of, since I'm homeschooled, I don't have a reason to go outside. So I push exercising to the back of my to-do list, and I probably would have considered exercising more often if I didn't have type 1, but I'm trying to put it into the regular routine now.
Because why? Because your blood sugar goes up when you exercise?
No, it goes down.
Oh, it goes down.
And if I do anything, if I eat 15 carbs, it goes down still. If I eat 20 carbs, it goes up. If I turn down the basil beforehand, it goes down, and then it goes to 300. And that was very, very hard to get a routine down. So I just said, well, this isn't the most important thing right now. So I think I'll just not.
You're going to try to figure it out. You should be able to figure it out, though. So if you're temp basiling back, working out, getting low, and then getting high later, then your temp basal is happening too late prior to the exercise.
That's what I thought. So I started doing it a half hour earlier, only a half hour, but then I started going up very quickly. And during the exercise.
So let's just make up numbers for a second, okay?
Yeah.
Let's pretend that you were doing a temp basal decrease an hour before you worked out, and you were then getting low and then getting high. I would try doing it 2 hours before you work out, but only for an hour. So 4 o'clock temp basal to 5 o'clock, and then work out at 6 o'clock. So that, does that make sense? So that
actually, yeah, I didn't think about that. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
So have you ever heard me talk about creating like a black hole with basal?
Yeah, but I think I didn't.
It's hard. It's a weird concept because there's a little bit of time travel in it, it feels like. But but if you take away your basal from 4 to 5, that won't really go into effect until maybe 6.
Yeah.
And so if you take it away from 4 to 5 and then work out, then the workout overwhelms the still active basal and you get low. And then just as you get low, you hit that black hole of basal and the workout, and then your blood sugar jumps up. So if you just shift the basal back farther, then you can put the workout in the black hole so that as the workout's trying to drive your blood sugar down, there's no insulin there to help it. It should stay stable. And by the time you get to the impact part where your blood sugar goes back up again, the basal should have been back on and re-engaged. Does that make sense? Because that's pretty convoluted.
It does. I will try that.
If you do that and make that work, I'm going to make you a t-shirt that says best listener and send it to you. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Although it probably costs $9,000 to ship something to Russia. So don't hold me to this.
Okay.
Okay. Plus, how would it even get to you? Like on the back of a sled dog or something like that? Or
Hey, why does everybody think we live in some kind of under some kind of rock?
No, because
we have everything here.
You have everything.
Really?
You got a PlayStation?
I don't like video games.
But you could have one if you wanted one?
I mean, they are available here, I think.
All right, you got the
I
internet,
don't know
obviously.
because I'm not into that.
You're not into it. I understand. Okay. So you would say that besides a bunch of snow, there's no difference between living in Russia and living in New Jersey?
Well, in New Jersey, I guess you can go straight to the hospital, but in Russia, you wouldn't know which hospital to go to, so you need to call beforehand since nobody just goes to the hospital. It's not a custom here. Every hospital is designed for a different thing. Like one hospital is only for endocrinological issues.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is only for surgery.
I got you. So I got to call ahead and say, hey, here's what's going on with me. I think this is where I need to go. Is that right? And then they'll tell me if I can go there or not.
No, you just need to wait for the ambulance and it'll take you there.
Oh, you get a ride.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's not bad. Do you have to pay for the ride?
No, there's free healthcare.
Wait, stop for a second. It's all free? Like you went to the hospital, you didn't have to pay anything?
No. And they give insulin for free, and you have pens, and they gave me a meter, and they give me test strips and lancets and everything.
But they don't do Dexcoms or Omnipods, but that's only because they're not for sale there. So you could have gotten a Medtronic pump, but there's a waiting list for that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And Medtronic sends like old janky pumps to Russia. By the way, Medtronic, send more pumps. What are you doing? Right?
No, they have the 670, but if you want a free pump, they're not going to give you the 670.
Well, don't be so cheap, Medtronic. Come on, right? Don't you want to help Sophia? Well, Sophia, you don't want that Medtronic, though. You love your Dexcom.
I like the Omnipod, yeah.
I gotcha. So you want Omnipod to sell Omnipods in Russia is what you want.
That would be way more convenient, yeah.
Do you want me to send this to somebody at Omnipod? I can do that. You want to tell them how important this is to you?
Sure.
Go ahead, tell them.
Please, children are dying.
Damn it, Sophia, you made me choke. Hold on a second. Are you usually this sarcastic, or are you just doing this for me?
I think that's just my personality. Yeah.
Oh, you really could be my Russian child. Do you think your parents would mind if I adopted you?
I think they'd be grateful.
Oh, Sophia, I am so happy that you reached out. Seriously, this is lovely. Okay, is there anything about your story that we haven't gone over yet? I imagine there is.
I skydived.
You skydived recently?
Yeah, a couple months. I think it was last summer.
I'm sorry. You made me laugh so hard. I snorted iced tea up in my nose, and now it's burning.
There are a couple things actually. I'm gluten-free and dairy-free.
Okay.
I guess I skydived, and I had a couple of bad lows.
During skydiving?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, let's pick through it for a second. Why do you eat gluten-free? You're not celiac, but you just don't want the gluten?
I had really bad stomach issues for such a long time. They thought I had appendicitis once, but I didn't. And my mom thought, okay, let's try eating gluten-free. And since then, I don't have any stomach issues.
Did they ever give you a celiac test?
No, well, I mean, yes, they gave me the test, but I don't have celiac, so it's weird. I mean, it was on the higher end, but it wasn't like anything that they said you definitely have it.
So they called it like a gluten intolerance or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
also dairy-free because I could never really stomach dairy since my childhood. I was always very nauseous.
Did it make you fart?
No, it just made my stomach hurt and very nauseous.
Made you wish you could fart. I understand. So, all right. So we don't do gluten and we don't do dairy. Omnipod and Dexcom, and a couple of bad lows. So you had bad lows back on MDI or recently? How did that happen?
Yeah, I never passed out, which I'm grateful for. But once I bolused for my morning oatmeal, and I started cooking it, and I forgot that I bolused, and 40 minutes passed, and I see 72 hours down. And I remember I bolused. I tried to eat the oatmeal, but I can't because I'm very nauseous. And at the end, my mom just at around 40, I couldn't drink so many units worth of juice. So we just both gave me a bit of glucagon, and I laid in bed the rest of the day.
Hey, got the day off, huh? Yeah, the problem in that situation is the oatmeal just doesn't hit you. Like, besides you being nauseous because you're low, the oatmeal is just not going to work fast enough at that point. You pre-bolus too long, which you know. But so what were you doing that you got? Do you remember what got you sidetracked?
I think I was listening to your podcast while making oatmeal.
You're saying I made you high today and low that day?
I wouldn't blame it directly on you.
Thank you. That's important, not to blame it on me.
Of course, because nothing you hear in the Juicebox Podcast is considered medical advice or otherwise.
Sophia, you know you're coming back on the show like a year from now, right? Like, I love you.
I hope so. I'm having a lot of fun.
My God, I'm having a lot of fun. I don't even care if people like this or not. This is fantastic. This is the best episode we've ever made. You are just, you're lovely. You really are. I'm having such a good time talking to you. I really appreciate that you came on and told me all of this and told everyone all this, because it's very hopeful to me that someone your age could be diagnosed, absorb the gravity of diabetes, find out what to do, even when they get kind of bad information, figure it out on their own, put it into practice, and do such a good job of taking care of themselves in such a short period of time is really inspirational. And I mean, you listen to this show, I don't use that word very often. So what you've done here is really amazing. I'm really excited for you. And I can't wait to see you figure it out when you, like, are you getting your period yet?
Oh, yeah, a year already.
Is it a pain with your blood sugars, or have you figured that out too?
Such a pain.
But you've got it worked out?
There's no pattern at all.
None.
Well, not that I can see. Some weeks I'm just constantly high a week before and during. Then other times I'm normal. Then I'm very low for some reason. And there's no pattern at all. But
you're still keeping your A1C where you are. So so you figured out to up your basal, and now you've got things back together again. So now you got to figure out how to be flexible when these changes happen. Like, you can't, I know it's hard for people to understand, but when you're managing a girl who's getting hit with hormones like this, you have to be able to, on a day-to-day basis, look and say, today is more basal. Doesn't matter why, it just is. This is the graph is telling me more basal here today, or the graph is telling me to be more aggressive with meals. And you have to just do it. And as quickly as you turn it on, you have to be ready to a day later turn it off again and just go, okay, let's go back to where we were, or go halfway back. It's it takes a little while to get used to.
Yeah.
Wow. I bet you didn't think we'd talk about your period, right?
I mean, I listened to one episode with, I think, some other girl, and I was expecting it.
You are? Okay.
At some point, yeah.
Can I ask a weird question? When the girl was on from Czech Republic, did you think, like, that's close to me?
She made it sound so not like life here.
Oh, it's different than you experience it.
Yeah, I don't see anything really weird about. I mean, maybe I'm just brainwashed. But
I don't think you're
other
brainwashed.
than that, we have everything here, I think.
You're like, I've got a light in my room and everything. No.
Yeah, I have a chair and a desk.
Look at you, fancy, with your chair. That's very Do you have and you have a killer cat? So that's nice.
I have 2 killer cats.
But it's not a Siberian tiger. It's just a regular house cat, right?
Oh, no. She's a panther.
Oh.
Panther.
I didn't recognize them. Well, you know, I'm just trying to figure things out. I don't leave this country, so I don't know anything. In my mind, you know, Canadians ride moose and
we just drink vodka since
the age
of 1.
I just assume you're training to be like an assassin. That's all.
Well, I didn't say I wasn't training to be an assassin.
Well, that would be a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so then should we just call your episode Black Widow, or what do you think we should do?
Mafia leader sounds more.
You don't want me to draw attention to you, like, because there is a Russian mob, right?
I don't know.
But you're 14. And look at you. Even if you did know, you would say you didn't know.
Or would I?
Well, you're very cagey. Okay, Sophia. We're going to stop here because I'm afraid that it's possible that a 49-year-old guy and a 14-year-old girl in Russia might become best friends if we talk much longer. So I'm going to, and I don't know what we eventually would talk about, but I'm going to say to you that I definitely want you to come back on sometime, like maybe a year or so from now. Like, I think I want to know what a 16-year-old Sophia sounds like. So let's set up goals right now. Let's just let the advertisers know right now the show's got to go at least 2 or 3 more years because we got to figure out what happens to Sophia.
I'm turning 15 in a couple of months, so maybe only a year in.
Shh, Sophia, please pay attention to what I'm doing here, okay?
Oh, yeah. The show has to go on for at least another 10 years, and I also want my future children to be on it.
Don't one of you try to adopt Sophia. I have dibs if she ever needs adoption. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm not kidding. I'm going to keep this podcast going forever just so I can talk to that girl over and over again. I want to thank Sophia so much for coming on the show and being amazing. I want to thank the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor for being amazing and for being available at dexcom.com/juicebox. I'd also like to thank the most accurate blood glucose meter that I have ever touched with these hands, the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. Find out more at contournext.com/juicebox. It is an amazing website. There's a ton of information there. Go check it out. There are links to these sponsors and all of the sponsors in the show notes of your podcast player or at juiceboxpodcast.com. When you support the sponsors, you're supporting the show. Thank you very much. Continue to share the show with others. Download as many episodes as you can. Listen to them with your ears and enjoy. I'll keep making them. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Sophia, if you're still listening, I want to make sure you understand without sarcasm that I so totally enjoyed talking to you on the podcast. I think you're terrific, and I really would like to speak with you again someday. I'm wishing you a lot of luck from over here in America. You made my day.